Hello, welcome everyone to a special Epiphan live event. This is our live feature reveal where we're going to give you a little bit of a glimpse into the future of what's coming to our Pearl products and a few other little pieces along the way. So welcome to viewers watching us on YouTube as well as on our website at epiphan.com. Really appreciate you being here, both customers, partners, and everyone joining us. We're really excited to bring you all of these things today. I'm here. I'm George. For those of you who don't know me, you may have seen my face before in some previous Epiphan videos. And I'm joined by Dave Kirk, our VP of Marketing and Product. And we're both super excited to bring you this stuff and reveal all these things today. But first, we wanted to try and really just talk a little bit about for a moment, where things are at in terms of Epiphan in general. I'm sure a lot of people have asked the question, not only of us in their heads, but also of their own industry and employers over the past 3 and a bit months, with all of the craziness with pandemic and everything else that's been going on. What's going on and how are people doing? So basically, one of the things that we've run into is that normally we would do these feature reveals, these product launches, and really share a lot of the updates with our customers at trade shows. But of course, those have all been canceled. Whether, I guess the last one we were at was in February at ISE in Amsterdam. And after that, normally in April, we would have been at NAB. Right now, we would normally be getting ready to fly to Infocom. And those were canceled. And so we had to figure out ways to do things a little bit differently. And so this is one of them. There's other things as well, but this is one of them. As a general thing we've been seeing is that as a company, we have been incredibly busy and active over these past few months. We've seen demand for our products and across the live streaming industry in general go way up, which is a good problem to have. Keeping pace with it has been a challenge, but a fantastic one to tackle and address. And we're lucky and we're very fortunate to be doing extremely well as a company in these tough times when so many are not. But we're also really excited of seeing all of the ways that our products are being used to adapt in these crazy times. And we're starting to see that some of that adaptation is going to stick around. It's probably not temporary. A lot of it is probably going to carry forward into the future. And so that's really, really exciting to see for us as a company who obviously provides these products to see that in the face of really terrible times, this really big push to move the industry forward in leaps and bounds that otherwise may have taken a year or two has happened in the span of months or weeks in some cases. So that's really exciting for us. And like I said, we've seen our customers do a ton of different things, whether it's the basic capture cards like our AVIO series, getting better quality video calls for people using Teams, Zoom, Skype, and so on for all of the different things that they need, but also hosting virtual conferences in the face of these trade shows being canceled and other events like that, moving these otherwise massive things to some form of online format. And I think we're still only at the beginning stages of that. We've seen some of our longstanding friends and partners and customers like Mike Sal from Savvy Productions leveraging their existing hardware fleet and sending those units out to their customers, in their case using Pearl 2s, to continue that live production. And this includes some very, very big major companies. And that's an amazing thing to see how quickly some of these people have been able to adapt. The other one is, of course, education. And that's one I think that going forward into the future is really going to skyrocket. We've seen, although a lot of people were not in classrooms from March until maybe a couple of weeks ago, now that we're kind of getting to the end of the school season in universities right about now, we're seeing almost an overnight flip into the AV and IT teams of these universities scrambling to say, okay, well, when we come back in September or whenever, it's a whole new world and we need a whole new set of gear. And so what we've been seeing early on with things like our friends at Thomas More University, sending out pre-configured pearls to integrate into their content management systems to lecturers' homes in order to just quickly get everything running. I think we'll continue to see that. And it's really exciting, again, to see that adaptation. And then, of course, we've seen other ones that we don't always see on a regular basis. And sometimes these are the ones that, for me personally, really I enjoy, as it feels like you're really making a difference in the world. So we had some customers in Australia, Jeanette, who is a manager, telemedicine and corporate services at the Women and Children's Hospital Network in North Adelaide in Australia. And we have a couple of quotes from them. In regards to telemedicine, they quote, "We use the Epiphan 4K, the AVIO 4K, to capture the ultrasound machine output and feed it into a secure video call in order to do telemedicine and remote consultation." And that's, when we're in lockdowns, when we're in quarantines, that's such a powerful tool. And then, quote, "We also use the Pearl Mini to live stream broadcast from the hospital COVID updates to all staff across the network. We're the only hospital in the state to keep our staff informed this way." And again, in this day and age, when information is so valuable, especially when we're talking about pandemics and lockdowns and current numbers, just that quick delivery of that type of information is an incredibly powerful tool. And it's really exciting, and it feels really good to be involved in even some small way with that kind of a project. And with the new Pearl features that we're going to be revealing for you today, I think, and I do believe, we're going to be able to open this up even wider and be able to help in many, many more ways. And so that's really, really, really exciting for us. So without further ado, let's take a look at what today's agenda is. So Dave, maybe take us through what we're going to cover today.
Yeah, so we're going to start actually with a LiveScript product update. So LiveScript is a product, for those of you who are really familiar with us. We announced it back in the ISE timeframe, and we showed it in our trade show booth there. And of course, this coming week, we would have been in InfoComm, as you mentioned. We would have been showing it there. The big difference, and the reason we're doing an update, is it's moved from, at ISE, it was a product we will have in the future. We were showing it as a prototype. It was, a working prototype, but still not in production. Now we're in production, and so we wanted to give a quick update of some of the small changes that have happened between then and now, and just give a refresh as to what that product is and how it's working. We're going to cover off, as you mentioned, the changes that are coming to Pearl, and some of them are big changes, and some of them are some smaller ones. So we're going to start with the smaller enhancements. We've made some tweaks. We're always getting customer feedback from the field asking, can you change this? Can you add this little thing? So we try to make sure in every release there's some major features and there's some smaller enhancements that are kind of customer requests that have come from the field. So we're gonna cover off those small enhancements. Then we're going to get into the bigger reveal, which is our key features that are coming in our 4.12 release. And at the end, we'll have some time for questions. So please do add your questions into the chat, and we'll get to them then. And at the very end of the event, we do have some Zoom breakout rooms. So if you want to continue the conversation, ask us more about these features, more about Pearl, or anything really, please join us in the Zoom breakout rooms. We'll have George will be there. I will be there. Anthony, our VP of Sales, will be there. So there'll be a bunch of fan people there that you come and chat with after this event is over. So that's how we're going to sort of frame the agenda.
Yeah. And then I guess without further ado, we will jump straight into an update on LiveScript.
Bring Greg Quirk, who's the product manager for LiveScript. We're going to bring him into the conversation, and we're going to let Greg run through some of the content, as we talked about, bring you up to speed on what's new on LiveScript and how things are going there. As we mentioned, we're in production now with LiveScript, so that's pretty exciting. Greg, I'll hand it over to you, and I'll let you kind of walk everybody through what's new on the LiveScript front.
Perfect. Thank you, Dave. So as you mentioned, LiveScript was announced at ISE in Amsterdam in February, and we've now gone into full production of the solution. So for people that aren't aware of what LiveScript is, it's a way to take audio in, convert it to text, and then display that text on monitors in the room or stream to a website so that people can see what is being said at a live event. This is great for people that have hearing challenges, maybe they speak a different language, or maybe they just get distracted when they're in a room and they're not able to follow along with what was being presented. You can now easily look over at the transcription and catch up on anything that you've missed. So the way that LiveScript works is you have audio that comes in, whether it's through a microphone directly or if it's audio going into an audio mixer, and it goes into the LiveScript hardware unit. From that, the audio gets sent to the cloud and it gets converted from speech into text and then comes back to the unit, and then it can be displayed through an HDMI output to monitors in the room, and it can get streamed to a website as well so that I can pull it up on my phone and view it on my phone. Doing this without LiveScript can be a very complicated thing because there's a lot of different pieces that you need to take into account. And LiveScript just simplifies that entire thing to a single box where you put audio in, provide internet, and you're pretty much good to go at that point. Some of the key features for LiveScript is the fact that it is extremely easy to use. So we've designed it to be, simple. You plug in your audio, you plug in your internet, and once it's been paired to AV Studio, you just push the start button in the top left and transcription just appears. There's not really a lot that you need to do other than that. It's also done in real time. So there are some solutions out there where after a live event, you will upload your video into a website somewhere, and within an hour or a day, you'll get transcription results. But that doesn't help you when you're in the room itself and you're trying to follow along with what's being happening or what's being presented. And with LiveScript, the results happen in real time. It's also extremely cost effective. So it's a single purchase for the hardware unit, and then it's $10 US per hour of transcription after that. So if you use it for 5 hours in a month, you'll get charged $50. But if you don't use it because something else is going on and you didn't need it, you won't get charged for that. And even though it's cost effective, if it wasn't accurate, it's still not going to be a good solution. So accuracy is a little bit difficult to measure, but we've figured it to be in the low to mid 90-ish range in terms of accuracy. And for most applications, that's going to be enough for people to be able to follow along with what's being presented and be able to understand. It supports more than 30 different languages and variants today. This was actually really great when we were demoing at ISE because I would do a demo in English and the person would say, "Oh, I really like it, but it would be great if it worked in German or Spanish or Dutch." And I would flip it into the different language mode, hand them the microphone, and watch their eyes light up as they started speaking and saw the results show up on the screen. As I mentioned, the output is shown on an HDMI output for monitors in the room or streamed to a website. It also shows up on the box itself. So if you're sitting as an operator and you've got it in front of you, you can see the results to make sure that you can see what's going on. And then after the event is over, you can download a text or an SRT file of the transcription so that you can either provide those to attendees, or you can have the SRT file if you want to add lower thirds onto a video that was recorded. So let's talk a little bit about some of the applications. So the ones you're seeing on the screen are some of the ones that we were anticipating people would be most interested in. The first one was for live events. Back when we were working on this product, we were going to events and we were getting a lot of interest from people saying that they wanted to have LiveScript so they could do transcriptions for all of the sessions, not just the keynote, but the breakout sessions as well. As things have transitioned and more events are going virtual, we've seen an increased demand in LiveScript for providing live transcriptions in lower thirds for these events as well. Education is a really interesting one because you can get that text file after the class is over. So the students don't have to spend all of their time writing down notes of what's being said by the professor. They can focus more on the content, the material, making sure they understand it, because they know they'll be able to get a text file afterwards and be able to use that as study notes. For houses of worship, hearing challenges are definitely a challenge for some of the parishioners. Age definitely becomes a challenge there a little bit, and as hearing challenges creep up, you want to make sure that all of the people that are in attendance are feeling inclusive in everything that's going on. And by having transcriptions show up and be available, that really opens up the accessibility. And from a corporate communication standpoint, again, this is something where we envisioned it being used largely for things like town halls, where there's a lot of employees and they might speak different languages, or there's a lot more distractions going on because it's more people in the room, and they wanted to be able to provide transcriptions for everyone to make sure everyone understood the direction the company was going. But we've seen some interesting applications for LiveScript that weren't ones that we had originally planned. So things like legislative assemblies. In a lot of places, transcriptions are required by law, but it's a very costly thing to do to have someone on staff and providing the transcriptions all the time. A lot of these meetings can sometimes happen at weird hours, or they can run very long, so it's quite costly to have a transcriptionist on staff. LiveScript makes it so that they can provide those transcriptions for all of the meetings that they're running. Another big one was court reporting. So being able to get someone in to do a deposition or a testimony, and having those people, show up, and having a court reporter to provide the transcription results is a bit of a challenge. And especially now with more people or fewer people needing to be in the room because of social distancing, having something like LiveScript enables them to still be able to take these depositions and get the transcription of what's being said. And another interesting one was a company that said, at the start of every day, we have warehouse staff that we talk to about what is going on, what they need to focus on. And it's a large gathering of people. And so, there's people in the back that can't hear. We'd had to pull out a bullhorn so that we could project our voice loud enough. And so now what they want to do is just put up a couple of large monitors and have the person just talk into a microphone, and then all the warehouse staff can see the results and understand what's going on. So some really interesting applications that have come out from LiveScript now that people are getting it and understanding the true value of what it can provide. As we mentioned, it's already shipping, which is great news. The not so great news is that our initial shipment has completely sold out. The demand is that high for the solution. We do have more on order, and so people are already placing pre-orders to make sure that they get some of those shipments as soon as we get them in. So if it is of interest, definitely reach out to us. And if you want some demos, I've been doing Zoom demos of it because you can share the screen. People can see the results of the solution, which is great. I've also had some people that have sent me YouTube clips and said, I want to see what kind of results I would get from my own content. And I can run that through the system and provide unedited LiveScript transcriptions for them. And, if you're looking for more information, you can reach out to your local partners, or you can go to info@epiphan.com and send us an email, and we're happy to help you out. And that is your LiveScript update. On to some other good stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. That was great. As Greg mentioned, we've had lots of interest in that product, and we expect there will be lots of people looking for it. So we'll get as many in as quickly as we can. But now I would like to start the next part of the agenda. Let's talk about some of the smaller feature enhancements that we've added to Perl over the next, well, that's coming out in the next little while. So there's 3 of these, I guess. And George, the first one has to do with, if we can advance the slides. Yeah, so this is for Perl and for Perl Mini. The first one is supporting multicasting in the publishers. And this was definitely one that came from a customer request where people wanted the multicast to behave much more like our standard publishing, to be able to stop and start it more easily and those kind of features. So we got that feedback loud and clear, and we've made modifications to the multicast. So now it behaves much more like our traditional publishing happens. So you set it up in the same way as other publishers. And if you have multiple of those going on, they're all listed there and they can be stopped and started just like any of our other stream publishing, which wasn't possible in the past. So that's a nice little change. Definitely going to help out the people who are managing lots of multicast and having to kind of turn them on and off and not wanting to have to completely delete them in order to do that.
Yeah, it just adds a lot of flexibility. As this example shows, previously you kind of had to choose one multicast type and of the 3 available and stick to that one, where now you could have multiple instances running and start and stop them as you need, depending on what you're doing with that particular one, as each variation of that may be useful for different workflows that you're going for. So that's a great little update that not everyone uses multicast, but for those that do, flexibility can be pretty key. And so I think this will be a great tool for those doing it.
Awesome. Next one up is some better AFU queue management. And so for those who aren't familiar with AFU, for us, AFU is our automatic file upload. So it allows you, when you're recording things locally on the device, to be able to push those recordings to a predefined destination automatically, so you don't need to manually get in there and transfer files or anything. And what this update does is it allows you to manually add items into that AFU queue. So in the past, the AFU queue was it was completely automatic. You enable it and you enable channels to be part of it. And then once those channels record, any of those assets would automatically end up in the queue. But we did get some customer feedback that occasionally they want to add other things into the queue as well. They don't want it completely automated. They want some control, some ability to modify it. And so we've added that. We've put a new button in there, allows customers to get in there while the queue's operating and add some other files that they might have recorded previously onto the queue to make sure that when they're archiving, they get everything that they need in that archive, and that it can kind of just join the regular workflow as part of the AFU, even if that file wasn't initially scheduled to be uploaded with the rest.
Absolutely. And funny enough, I think for myself and for many of our team on customer support, one of the ways that we encounter this quite often is that when people are setting things up, they actually start using their Perl. They're super excited about it. And afterwards they go, I forgot to turn on AFU. But anything they had already recorded is not going to automatically go into that queue, like you were saying. So they can turn it on after the fact and go back and manually check those files now that may not have been in the queue beforehand, and make that corrective action. So, it seems like a small thing, it seems like a minor thing, but it's a quality of life update that really helps, I think, in terms of setting these things up, which is fantastic. So small, but really, again, a great piece and flexible, which is super important.
Great. And we got one more small enhancement that we made, and that is to update our streaming errors and warnings. So we've always had some errors and warnings if there's insufficient bandwidth and those kind of things. But we did, again, feedback from customers was saying in certain circumstances, those messages weren't detailed enough or didn't have the meaning or the connotation for them that they should have. So we've updated that. And instead of getting something just as simple as connection timed out or just connection failed, we've added more detail into there. And we've done that not it's
we
not
had a
streaming itself. We've expanded those errors and warnings to go into other places as well.
Yeah, so we had a small interruption there, Dave, on your feed, but that's fine. But yeah, again, the main thing here is this is a big actually quality of life update for many customers, where just that error reporting being much more detailed. This screenshot's a great example where now it will say something like connection timed out, where previously it might just say IO error or something, input output error, and which really didn't mean anything to the average user. And so, digging into the logs sometimes is impractical on the fly. So this is going to help a lot. Kind of as part of that, we've made sure that there's some other places to get information as well. There'll be errors popping up in other screens as well to kind of give you that feedback about these same errors. So that's important, including on the front touch screen of the Pearls. There before you used to basically just get an icon saying something was wrong. So again, just making these errors more present, more clear, to help speed up that troubleshooting process should you encounter any problems. Another one is we've made the information page, the main info screen on the Pearls, a little more detailed, a little more robust in terms of the status reporting, error reporting, and things like that. So previously you would get a status okay, essentially saying, well, I'm encoding something, but all right. But that wasn't very detailed. And you wouldn't get any errors in terms of streaming and things like that, or recording timers. So now with the updated info page, we get some quick status lights, essentially, some recording time indicators per channel, which is helpful. And then, of course, the streaming timers and streaming errors listed there. So as a dashboard for the administrator, this is going to be much more detailed and usable day to day, which is fantastic. So finally, we're going to jump into our big feature reveal here, really what we came here for today. But just before we do, I want to remind people that we have put up a couple of polls asking a few different questions, like what industry are you in and so on. Please weigh in on those polls. We'd like to hear from you on that. But definitely a big one today is the new features that we're bringing to the Perl family of encoders. So the first one that we want to talk about, and maybe this is maybe the biggest of this update, would you say?
I think it's most exciting. Yes, I would say it's the biggest for sure of the updates.
Yeah, and that is adding SRT encoding and decoding. So for those of you not familiar with SRT, SRT stands for Secure Reliable Transport. It's an open source video transport protocol that was created by Haivision. And there's a huge ecosystem, usually represented by the SRT Alliance. And if you look at this graphic, there are a ton of names, and this is not even close to the full list. But there are a lot of partners involved here as part of the SRT Alliance, including Epiphan. So this is something we're really excited about because bigger ecosystems is fantastic. It's something that we're really excited for.
I was going to say, we've been watching this alliance for quite some time, and over the last 6 months, it's really gained a lot of steam, even over the last 12 months. So this is something that I know we spoke with Wowza about, 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and it was just getting off the ground. And now you can see with this set of logos up here, they've really done a great job of capturing all the players in the industry. And a lot of these players have multiple products on which SRT is supported, and that list is growing. So we felt it was the right time for us to kind of jump into the party and add it to our products as well. So we've had a number of people ask us at trade shows and other events, have you thought about SRT? We've had a lot of people asking about it, and we're super happy now to finally be able to say it's here. We've got it on Perl.
Exactly. And for those of you, again, not maybe familiar with SRT, the ecosystem is broad in a lot of ways because it can be used by CDNs like Wowza as an ingestion method and even a delivery method in some cases. There's decoders, encoders like the Pearl there's media gateways, PTZ cameras that have it built in, and you'll see a lot of those names out on this list, and more. And one example where things were used over SRT very recently was actually in the NFL draft. So if anyone's a football fan and was watching that, they were delivering a lot of that program using SRT, which is super, super exciting. As an example of ways that traditional broadcast is using this streaming technology to, kind of broaden the scope and also make it easier to get from point to point with a reliable transport. So that's super important. Microsoft uses it, during some of their large events. Again, that's a big one. NASA's used it to distribute some of the live streaming across control rooms. And one of the reasons that they use this is one of the things that SRT really offers is low latency. The other thing is that latency can be adjustable to a degree. Now, we'll go into a more technical thing in a bit, but low latency, being firewall friendly in terms of being able to traverse firewalls more easily than traditional protocols. And as the first part of the acronym, secure. That's a critical one that everyone is looking for today. They want things to be secure. They want things to be encrypted. And SRT offers all of these things, which is absolutely amazing. So I guess the other things that we can look at is how do we use SRT? So Dave, maybe, take me through this diagram. It's a fairly straightforward one, but this breaks down it pretty simply.
Yeah, this one's quite simple. So you're starting with a source. In this case, we're saying Pearl Mini. And
we got a small interruption there again on Dave's feed. I apologize, everyone. Small internet glitches over at Dave's location.
So can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you back.
Okay, sorry about that. So Pearl Mini is going to generate an SRT feed up towards your destination. That destination could be a local server or a CDN, some kind of streaming server that's going to do the distribution of that content out to your viewers. And so really there's SRT running in both directions here. The video and audio is going from Pearl Mini towards your streaming server destination. And there's a back channel built in that feeds back diagnostics and packet recovery information so that you can get a better quality stream over a network that may not be quite so reliable. And that's one of the key features of SRT is it is able to be tuned a little bit to the behavior of the network, whether it's packet loss or a long round trip time. There are ways to adjust the protocol quite easily to suit that and give you the best quality possible over whatever link you have. And so this is really the simplest workflow where you're just going straight from Pearl to there. One of the other ones, as you can see here, that we're really excited about is the whole idea of being able to bring in a remote guest using SRT. So being able to, in this example, take someone who's using a Pearl Mini, and instead of taking that feed and going directly to the CDN, bringing it first into a Pearl 2 in order to do further production. So you could be bringing a remote guest in and doing a 2-up or a 3-up like we're doing today. You could be mixing them in and doing switching on the Pearl 2, and then that Pearl 2 could then use SRT to send it on to that CDN destination. So that's why we've added both the SRT encoding, which is out towards the CDN, as well as the SRT kind of decoding on the front end so that we can receive SRT. And that could be an SRT camera. It could be a Pearl Mini. There are a whole bunch of things you could bring to use SRT into the Pearl 2. And of course, Pearl Mini is a great one to start with.
Exactly. And of course, you're not necessarily limited to just that one, right? I mean, the thing here is assuming you have the bandwidth to support it, like with all live streaming, you could have multiple points, multiple people who each have an SRT encoder, like a Perl or some other one, feeding that all into a central hub, if you will, and then ultimately that back out. And of course, if we're ingesting it like this diagram shows, ingesting multiple SRT streams, kind of aggregating them on a Perl 2 in this case, and then going out to the CDN, it doesn't have to be SRT out to the CDN. We can then transform it into another protocol like RTMP traditionally, to go to that CDN. And
Correct.
so this gives us a fantastic way of bridging, especially multiple points like this into a single presentation. And honestly, there's some of this has been one of the biggest struggles over the past few months with this pandemic stuff, is people trying to figure out exactly how to do this in an easy way. And there's been a lot of barriers to try and overcome with that. So we're really excited about where this will go in the future. So comparing this, when we're looking at essentially the Perl family of products, which includes the first generation Perl, Perl 1, I suppose, Perl EV. It's been around for a while. It was discontinued some years ago. The Perl Mini and the Perl 2 being the current products. All three models are going to be receiving this update and being able to take advantage of SRT, both encoder and decoder. So this is really exciting, even for people who might have the older hardware generations, to be able to make use of this new technology. In terms of the encryption types, all three are going to support the encryption types that SRT has with AES 128, 192, and 256. So if you happen to have a particular mandate, that a minimum encryption level, you have some options there. And then the SRT connection modes, caller, listener, and rendezvous, which kind of play into some of those things we were talking about in terms of different site to site. And we're not going to go quite too deep on that today, but those are kind of normal functions of SRT. And you'll see that all models support that. One of the things that, of course, will differentiate the three kind of models here is the number of SRT inputs and the number of simultaneous SRT outputs. So here, and this to some degree comes down to a system performance. So the original Perl will support up to 3 SRT inputs and up to 4 SRT outputs. The Perl Mini, 1 input, 3 outputs, and then the Perl 2, being the most powerful of the 3, of course, will do 6 and 6. So kind of like those diagrams we're pointing out before, if we're trying to have multiple points aggregated into one place in hardware, you might distribute Perl Minis to those remote points, bringing them into a Perl 2, and then bringing it back out from there, as one example of a setup you might do. So one of the things we wanted to look at here is a little bit of SRT in action. So Dave's going to try and run double duty here and play 2 characters at once. And we're going to bring in Dave again over SRT.
So I'm also going to use a different microphone. We just want to demonstrate the quality difference that you can see with SRT versus something like Zoom or another kind of protocol. And that goes for both the video and the audio. So hopefully you can hear that the audio is of good quality. The video looks sharper and cleaner. And that's really what you expect when you switch to SRT. And so when we talk about bringing this remote guest experience, that's really the value that SRT brings, is it's able to work over the network that they have and give a better quality image and audio for the user.
Yeah, absolutely. And another part of this, of course, is we are seeing a latency difference between your 2 feeds there. One of the reasons for that is that we very specifically tuned the buffer on the Perl that you're using to stream SRT to our studio in order to compensate for a few network hiccups that we've seen examples of in your normal feed. But that's one of the advantages of it, is you have that manual control. So assuming that you have a perfectly clean, beautiful network, you could set that buffer extremely low and have very low latency. But if you're struggling, you can make some changes there as well to fine tune it, which is awesome. So the other thing, of course, is looking at kind of in general, what other things we're adding as part of this. SRT is a huge part of it. Another part is some other kind of future, current, growing, I guess, publishing protocols. SRT is one that also has that other ingest and output option on the pearls. But we also know that in this day and age, we're starting to see more and more platforms moving away from RTMP. RTMP has been around basically forever, and it's starting to show its age. It's lacking a lot of the features and functionality that people are starting to expect from modern streaming, and so there's new protocols in play. SRT is a big one. NDI is talked about a lot from an internal network perspective, and it has some similarities with SRT, other than it really can't be used across the internet realistically. So, what else do we have? Well, HLS and MPEG-DASH are definitely ones that are talked about a lot, and we're excited to say we're also adding these to the Pearl family.
Yeah, and I think we have had a number of customers asking for these kind of additions. HLS and MPEG-DASH do fill a need to replace, as you said, that RTMP protocol that's been around forever and ever. It really is the protocol that they need on the distribution side. So when we talk about adaptive bitrate streaming and all the kind of features on the distribution side, the CDN really needs to be delivering those in a live video context. And having HLS or Dash on that side of their network, really, it can work with RTMP and does today work with RTMP. But moving that ingest side to match and have HLS and Dash opens up some new features and capabilities that RTMP just doesn't have, and people just aren't interested in adding to a protocol that's that old. So we're really keen to get HLS and MPEG-DASH on Pearl to give our users options when they're connecting to their CDNs or their streaming servers. They want the most flexibility possible because those new features, as they open up, these are the protocols that are going to support them. And so we start to see CDNs moving away from RTMP, and we wanted to make sure our users have lots of choice to be able to use, HLS, Dash, or SRT when they're trying to figure out, how do I get my content from my encoder up to that streaming server destination.
Exactly. So some of the things that RTMP could never really do and really can't do that these newer protocols can really unlock and allow are things like multilingual support. A single video track with multiple audio tracks. That's something RTMP just is can't do. It's just impossible. Other information that might be in parallel data channels, metadata things like closed captioning or advertisements, there's layers to these newer protocols. They're not as simple as just, one video, one audio and blasted like RTMP was. And of course, certainly from the CDN side, where they're going to be distributing it to viewers, things like DRM support could be important. If you're a Netflix or a company like that, that can be a critical function for delivering that content to the ultimate viewer. From our perspective, of course, we're looking at contributing and putting this data up to those CDNs. And, certainly the multilingual possibilities for closed captioning and all these other things are very important from that perspective.
Right.
So the other thing we wanted to talk about was, people have kind of seen these protocols before. HLS is a big one for sure. And so talking a little bit of history there, HLS was essentially started by Apple as a way of getting streaming onto iOS devices, iPhones and iPads, outside of the older protocols, knowing that they wanted a certain level of control and to be able to do and deliver reliability, to be honest. And HLS can do that. MPEG-DASH essentially accomplishes the same thing, but of course came from a different group where it came from MPEG and ISO. So different standard group, really creating a similar protocol to the same end. Which of these protocols is going to win in the long run is yet to be seen. So we wanted to make sure that both options are there. Again, a big part of just product development for Epiphan in general is about flexibility and making sure that we have both of these can help us deliver that to our customers. with whatever ultimately CDNs decide they want to use. And like you mentioned, Dave, HLS in, for an example, and HLS out means they have to do less transcoding, and that can make delivering these services cheaper. And when we're in this mode of trying to get more and more live streaming going, cost can sometimes be a factor. And if this can bring down those costs of delivery, all the better for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So maybe to wrap up here, we just want to recap. So we had some small feature enhancements on 4.12, the AFUQ and the publishing for multicast, and changing those error content to be a little bit more meaningful and helpful, and spreading them to the touchscreen and things. SRT, again, that's the big one that we're very, very excited about. And then also HLS and MPEG-DASH. So that's really what we've added. This firmware will be kind of available very soon. We're in the final kind of verification stages now, so all the design is done. A few weeks back, we joined in the Plug Fest that the SRT Alliance held, where we did a bunch of testing with all kinds of different gear across the network. Not all of those vendors that we showed, obviously, but there were a lot of vendors at this Plug Fest, and we got a chance to test our interoperability with all kinds of different cameras and streaming destination servers and all kinds of stuff, and that went really well. So we're very excited. We're very close to the release of this. You'll see it in the coming weeks. And we'd love to hear your feedback once you get a hold of it. Let us know how it's working, and by all means, bring us more feedback on what you'd like to see next.
Absolutely. And so we are happy to take some of your questions. So I do see a couple of questions coming in. First one from John asking, has LiveScript been tested with picking up the lyrics with live music? To my knowledge, I don't believe so, and that might be a bit of a challenge in terms of discerning between the music versus the lyrics in terms of the way the AI recognition works. But if Greg is still there, then we can maybe have him come in and address that one for LiveScript.
Yep, I'm still here. So I haven't tried
to actually play back a video clip of music and see what kind of results I would get. The system does a fairly good job of isolating voice. So if there's background noise, it does a fairly good job of picking up a voice. So it would depend a little bit on what type of music you're listening to. If you're listening to thrash metal, it might have some challenges with that. But if you're listening to something a little bit more poppy, it should be able to do a fairly good job with that. But it's something that I can run through the system and take a look at for sure.
Yeah, so that's fantastic, Greg. There was another question here as well. Just saying, quite amazing. Out of curiosity, are there any tools that you're able to leverage the transcription to do automated sign language? Yeah, that's a whole other ball game, and I don't think the technology is quite there yet. But hopefully in the not too distant future. But yeah, signing is that's next level in terms of that kind of thing. So stay tuned for how things may develop in that direction. But for the time being, no, not exactly. We did get another question here. How does SRT work along with NDI? I mean, they are two separate streaming protocols, but they share some similarities in the way they could be used. So it depends, I guess, on the context of how you're trying to use them. NDI is not intended to be internet routable, where SRT is. So while SRT can work extremely well on your internal local area network, and so can NDI, if we're talking about external to your network outside of the local area, NDI is really not viable where SRT is. SRT is also much more fine-tunable, but NDI is much more automated and self-discovery and things like that. So, it depends on the context of where you're trying to use them, I would say. Can you use both at the same time on a Pearl? Yes, you could. Again, depending on some variables of how many of each and those kind of things. Certainly, in the case of NDI, that's only supported on the Pearl 2. It isn't supported on the Pearl Mini or the original Pearls. So, just keep that in mind.
I can definitely see scenarios where someone may have, NDI cameras in a room where there's an event. And then when they want to bring in a remote guest, they're bringing that one in over SRT. And so on kind of the inside of Pearl, you'd be seeing some SRT come in, some NDI come in, and then you can do mixing and switching of those video feeds. And then, of course, you can go out either NDI or SRT to your next kind of stage. So you can definitely mix and match. And I think in several scenarios, it really does make sense where NDI is the right choice and SRT is the right choice, for that more distant guest that you're bringing in.
Exactly. So there's another question here as well from Calvert Labs, just saying, this is fantastic. Is this just a firmware update? And if so, when will it be available? Yes, it is going to be just a firmware update for the Pearls. We don't have a specific date to give you right now, other than it will be a couple weeks' time this month in June. That's the goal. We're just polishing up some final things and going to deliver it as quickly as we possibly can. Our head of QA is very meticulous and won't let it go out the door until he's happy with it. So we're just making sure that everything meets those high QA standards before we deliver it, but it will be imminent. And then John also asked, was that demo done on the same Pearl 2? So what we did for that SRT demo is, Dave, you have a Pearl Mini in your home at the moment, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So I've got my camera feeding into the Mini and my mic feeding into the Mini, and then I'm going SRT to a Pearl 2 that's located in our Ottawa studio, and that's where we're doing all of the switching that you see in titling and stuff that's happening for this broadcast. So I'm using the Pearl Mini much like the one slide we showed in the deck. I've got Pearl Mini at my end. There's Pearl 2 at the Ottawa studio end in our office, and then from there we're going out to YouTube.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there's some other questions coming in here as well. The first one, actually, what I'm going to suggest for this first one, where you're asking about using the Cerevo shell for your live streams to YouTube and Facebook, I'm going to say, if you want to have a deeper discussion with us about that and how our products might be able to help you in comparison to that, join our Zoom call afterwards in the breakout rooms, and I'm happy to go over more detail with you on that. That's a bit bigger one to unpack right now. Another question here, is there a plan to add phantom power to the Pearl 2 for direct microphones? No, that would be a substantial hardware change, and it would not really be feasible or possible at this time on the Pearl 2. Pearl Mini, of course, offers that. Unfortunately, yeah, the hardware change necessary would be pretty extreme. There we go. I think that's all the questions. So if you do have any other questions, feel free to quickly throw them into chat. Otherwise, if you want to dive a little deeper and have a more in-depth conversation with myself or Dave or Anthony, who will be joining us in the Zoom room, we're going to put that information up on the screen. Feel free to join that Zoom room. If you want to talk to one of us specifically, let us know once we're there, and we will definitely put you into a private breakout room if you'd prefer, and let those conversations happen. We'll be hanging out in that room for a while, but of course, if not too many people are jumping in right away, we may of course end that a little earlier. So again, feel free to follow us over there. We'll be wrapping this up just a moment here, and we'll definitely see you there. Of course, as always, I want to thank you very much for watching today. I hope this news is exciting for your workflows and all the other things that you're looking at doing with the Epiphan Pearl. If you're a current owner, that's awesome. Really excited to see how you use this. If you've been on the fence trying to decide whether or not buying a Pearl is right for you, maybe these new features are the decision maker. And, that's a big one for us. So that's something we look forward to hearing from you and going through that. Of course, check all of our products at epiphan.com/products. You can schedule a demo with us through an online demo request form on our website, or you can always send us an email, info@epiphan.com. You can always follow us on all of the social media things, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and we always do announcements and things like that. We've been doing a ton of webinars since the beginning of March. This week we didn't because we were doing this event instead, but we've been doing 1, sometimes 2 webinars a week. So check out epiphan.com/webinars for past and upcoming webinar sessions. There's a ton of information out there we've already done and have more coming up. We have continued every Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern to produce our Live at Epiphan show. So don't miss that. This week, Dave and I will be back, and we're going to really dive deep on the protocols we've been talking about. We're going to unpack that and really drill in and talk about it in more detail. So join us on Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern. If you want to know more about things like SRT, HLS, and DASH, we'll be really excited to bring you that as well. So that'll do it for now. Like I said, join us over in the Zoom room momentarily and go a little deeper. I did see one last minute question here that my mods are flagging for me in terms of, is there any update on controlling audio on each individual input, specifically the digital ones, SDI and HDMI? I don't actually have an answer for that.
Yeah, well, the only answer I would give is not in this particular firmware update, not in the one that we're announcing today. But that's definitely on our radar. We are looking at that for future release. But for the release that we're talking about in the next couple of weeks here with SRT and DASH and HLS, that's not going to be part of that.
Right. All right, that'll do it. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you in the Zoom room if you want to go a little deeper in conversation with us. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.